What up? What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter. Stoked to be here tonight to discuss Jordan Peele's Nope. All right, what up? What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for being here. I got Nick with me. I got Eric. Nick from Comic Culture. If you guys are into comic books in the least bit, it's one of the greatest places on the YouTubes to go learn about comics from week to week. What up, brother? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter.
Oh, dude, happy to be here, dude. Thanks for having me. You know me, Horrorhead Nick, back in the house. Talking about
Nick.
some movies, dude. Thanks for having me, dude.
Hell yeah, man. And one of the reasons why I wanted you here is because I wanted E on the show. And I'm like, Nick and E, that's going to be a good pairing. So, Eric in the house, I don't have anything to promote for you other than that you're a super bright guy. And every time I have seen you online, I'm like, dude, this dude is great at this and he needs to do it way more. So, what up, brother? Thanks for being here.
Dude, glad to be here. And if that's anything you need to promote, like I'm good with that. So let's roll with it.
Perfect. All right. So today we're going to be talking again about Jordan Peele's Nope. Jordan Peele wrote this thing. He directed it. He produced it. It's starring Daniel Kaluuya, Keke Palmer, Steven Yeun, Brandon Perea, and Michael Wincott. So one of the reasons why I'm really glad that you guys kind of landed on this movie and we picked it is because neither of you have seen this flick, which is cool.
Right.
So usually if people that watch this show, what I like to do is up front, we just go around and get our general overall thoughts on the thing. But because of the nature of this movie and the divisiveness of this movie, I think it'd be fun to kind of just like go through the flick and we'll reveal your opinions as we go. And then you guys give your overall thoughts and your letter grades at the end of this thing. So this is Peele's third movie. He came out, I think it was 2017 with Get Out. My opinion, masterpiece. One of the greatest horror movies of all time, and one of the most important films of the 21st century, horror or otherwise. And then he came out with Us, a little bit more divisive, still a pretty badass movie, but not perfect for me. And Nope is by far his most divisive movie. You've got people that think it's brilliant, you got people that think it's trash, and you got a lot of people in the middle, which is why I think this is going to be such a fun conversation. So you guys watching on the premiere, put your comments, your thoughts down below. Make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not. But yeah, let's get into this thing, man. The setup for this flick, we have this, it's a really weird, like really specific job that this family has. We have this family of horse wranglers out in Hollywood. They work in the movies, and in the opening scene, a bunch of debris comes falling from the sky and kills the owner of the ranch, the father of the family, and now the ranch has been passed down to the family. So they're dealing with trying to keep the ranch afloat, keep the business afloat, and now they've got strange UFO sightings in the skies that were basically what it all comes down to is the main plot is trying to get a picture of this thing or this thing on video, which is kind of weird right from the get-go. But Nick, I'll send it to you with just the initial setup of the film. Like, did you find it engaging? Were you engaged in the mystery? And what did you think of the setup? Not with just what's going on at the ranch, but what we're kind of being hinted at is happening over at Steven Yeun's farm over there, and just the general mystery that's set up in the flick. What'd you think of it?
I thought they handled it pretty well. You don't quite know what that debris is in the beginning. You hear a lot of screaming and things like that, and voices and yelling, and it's kind of coming in and out, and you don't quite know what's going on. You presume it's like I thought it was like a plane crash at first. Like a plane was coming through, it hit something, and then the debris was falling down. But then you notice like what kind of debris it was. And then that just kind of throws you right off. It's like, well, there's no plane parts. There's nothing going on. There's like loose change and keys and stuff. And then it quickly turns away from that because now we got to save Dad, because Dad was like a casualty of this whole incident. The Keith David was playing the father in this one, the great one. And
one of his many roles in this film, according to the back chat. That's a bit of an inside joke.
That's right.
You guys are cracking me up.
Yeah. So I thought it was a good hook in the beginning because it's like there's obviously a close relationship between the son and the father. There's a cool dynamic there, very niche profession, like you were saying. It hooked me from there. There was a mystery. Now we got to save Dad. And then we cut back to just like everyday life. Like things must go on and nothing was really explained. And it was, it kind of planted the seed for like, where the hell are we going with this? Like, is that a monster? What was that? So I think it did a pretty good job of hooking you in the very beginning.
Right. No, I agree. I think for me, I mean, I like a lot of bits of this film, but on the rewatch, I was really impressed with the opening of the film. Even the little bit of character development that we get between the brother and sister, which we'll get into. But yeah, I think he does a really good job. It's almost like a J.J. Abrams style mystery box, riddle box setup to the
Love it.
flick. But what about you, Eric? What'd you think?
I think it did a great job of the layout, right, of the movie. And I think it, like, actually after you watch the movie and look back at it, I think you appreciate it even more so because it really develops the, like you were guys saying, the oddities of this profession that they're dealing with, and the son and father relationship, and how the son is, been there his entire life, and he's kind of like the next in charge, right? He knows he's training to be the next person up, and it lays the foundation for the family and the background of everything that's going on before it really gets into the minutia of where the story is going to go, right? So it really, you have a deep, feeling for these characters, and you're already ingrained with, like, hey, what's going on? What are they, what are their motivations? And then keys and change and all kinds of crazy crap starts falling from the sky, and it just, like, by then you're just like, all right, I'm in. I'm totally in.
Yeah,
hell yeah,
for sure.
No, I couldn't agree more. So I'm kind of thinking, what's the best way to attack this, man? I think what I want to get into next, because we end up involving Steven Yeun in the story. Did you guys watch this with subtitles on? I'm just curious.
No,
did not.
Did either of you pick up at the moment when Ghost, the one white horse, it takes off, and then in the distance, the first time I ever saw the flick, I had no idea what was going on, and now on a rewatch, it is pretty clear, like, oh, that's Steven Yeun's voice, and he's giving some kind of presentation every week, every Friday for the past month. My family has been visited by this and that. Like, were you guys picking up on what that was there, or were you just like, oh, what is this mysterious light down in the distance? Because that's how I was the first time I watched it. This is for either of you. There's going to be a lot of questions where I just throw it out there and you guys fight each other to see who answers.
Eric, go ahead. You got anything on that?
No. I'll go ahead and I'll jump in and say I had a dunce cap on. I was right there with you the first time viewing. I'm like, hey, what is going on here? I knew the kind of background of the movie, so I was like, I wasn't surprised, but I ended up being surprised because it wasn't what I thought it was.
Right. Yeah, that was a surprise for me. Like, I didn't realize how big of a role Steven Yeun's character was going to play in this, and like the whole theme park that he developed. I assumed based on trailers this was going to be an alien invasion movie attacking this farm, and whatever we saw in the distance, whatever lights we saw in the distance was the ship, right? Like, that's the assumption that you have to draw, because you don't really have a whole lot of details just yet.
Right. You're not used to, like, it's not like Steven Yeun's in cahoots with the alien, but there's not usually like some kind of partnership or some kind of team going on between humans and aliens in these type of flicks.
Yeah, true.
I mean, just the preview and the posters and all the setup is total misdirection. We're going to get into that, if you feel hurt by Jordan Peele at points in this movie. I guess at one point the working title was Little Green Men, and it's like, bro, that would have been way too way too much of a misdirection. Speaking of Steven Yeun, his whole chunk of the movie where he's got this backstory where he was a child actor, and on set one day, an animal actor went crazy and killed all the members of the TV family, right? And he witnessed the whole thing. You can tell, like, he hasn't really dealt with the trauma properly. He's telling the story about it like it's kind of funny and it's all lighthearted. And the way they flash back to his real terror in that moment, it clearly traumatized this kid. What did you guys think of kind of that whole section of the story with Gordy and the flashback? And let's just start with like that scene. We're going to get into the horror elements, but I think this is probably one of the biggest like horror scenes in the movie. What did you think of everything dealing with Gordy and the attack?
It was the only horror element. How about that I perceived in this?
There's movie. One more major.
There is one more. But when you're talking about, like, how about, it's the most horrific thing, I think. In the movie, just because of the brutality of it, right? So, like, there's a lot of different scenes. What I want to do is I want to back up a little bit where we're talking the first time we ever meet him, we're in the office negotiating the next horse sale, right? That scene was brilliant because, as Eric was just alluding to, like, on a second watch, so much of the stuff makes more sense. And you were talking about it with, like, the announcement you hear at the beginning in the dark, right? A lot of that conversation makes a lot more sense. And like you were just saying, he's definitely repressed it, but he's found a way to monetize that experience. And so I feel like the drive to monetize that experience outweighs his trauma, he thinks, right? But like, as he's recounting those moments, you can see him dying in the face a little bit, and he's having these little flashbacks, which I thought were really brilliant. When we finally got the scene where he's under the table, if you want to expand on this, he's underneath that table and he's just watching this this monkey killing people on set, and he's just trying to, like, hide from this damage, right? Like, that was a really brilliant moment. And there's a cool flashback when he shows the picture of the first fist bump or whatever, the fist explosion,
The
whatever,
first exploding fist
the
bump. I
first
love
exploding
that. That's
fist.
such a cool little detail.
He has
to
it in
put
the
there. It's
back.
like,
He has it like in the back secret, like collection room or whatever.
yeah, that
And
he
they
used to charge for.
Oh, they used to charge for it, and then but they redo it in that scene, and it's like such a shocking ending. An ending that I saw coming, but it still hit when it happened, right? That
Right,
little
right.
fist bump with the execution. So
One little thing that stuck out to me this watch through is just the way that, like, when they're having that little meeting and OJ, kind of our main character, one of our two main characters, he's like, yeah, I want to lay down a path work to
yeah,
buy
I was
back
gonna
some
go
of these
there.
horses. And Steven Yeun,
He's like,
what
yeah,
he's doing in real life, he's taking these horses and feeding them, sacrificing them to the
Mhm.
alien. But how like convincing he is, yeah, we can definitely
yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
sure,
He's like, this dude is full of shit. Like, he
right,
doesn't come across it, but he's all of his like toxicity is way under the surface. He comes across
right,
like the complete opposite of who he really is on the inside and the way he behaves. But
yeah,
what about you, E? What you think of the Gordy chunk?
Oh, I think it's integral to the entirety of the movie. Like, I mean, if you look back at it, it truly is probably it's the theme of the movie. It drives the theme. And it's probably arguably the most divisive part of the movie. I can see why people were like, "Oh, I don't know how I feel about this movie." But truly, this is the engine that drives the car, right? Yeah, I did love the fist bump, and I did not see it coming. So when it hit, I was just like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god!"
yeah,
Yeah, I lost my mind in that part, but I would argue that Steven Yeun is probably, I mean, his performance in this movie was probably my absolute favorite because, like Nick was saying, like, I mean, when you can absolutely see it in his face that he has not dealt with it. He's absolutely using this for profit. He's found a way to monetize it, like you said,
Yep.
and yeah, but he brings it forth so well. As you know, you
Mhm.
could see this in a way that would be cheesed up so easily, and he
Right.
doesn't.
Right.
And like he's like tricked himself into being as excited as the fans are of that TV show, right?
Right.
Because
Yes.
did he say he rented out the room to a couple for like thousands of dollars or to
Right.
spend the night there? So and he was like excited to show everyone the next thing. Like
I love
this is
the way he's describing like the fake Saturday Night Live sketch.
It's Catan. He's just crushing it. He is a force of nature. He is killing on that stage.
first off, great casting.
Right.
I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it is. To expand on what you're talking about, E, with the way it is like the theme of the film, where what we end up finding out, spoiler alert, what is thought to be a UFO is an actual animal. It is the alien itself. I'll be honest with you. The first time I watched the movie, and I think the first time a lot of people that are just as dumb as me and dumber didn't really make the connection entirely between the way that Gordy was treated, the way the message that they're talking about, the way that animals are exploited in Hollywood is the same way that this Steven Yeun, who was a victim of that exploitation, is now doing the same thing and exploiting the animal. Like, I really did not make that connection until the second, third time watching the movie. And I think that is one of the biggest things that drove a lot of the discussion around this movie at the time that it came out, is people thought like it doesn't fit in the movie. They're like, how the fuck does that fit? Like, the shoe standing up, like, why didn't it come back? And it doesn't really come back in a narrative sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way that most things would in a movie like this, it's setting it up, and then it only comes back to it thematically. You've got to be smart enough to make that connection. And if you're like me, you're gonna leave the theater being like, what the hell was that? But I don't know. Do you get either of you have any thoughts expanding on the idea, the way that those connect with the alien, the way that thematically they connect together?
Eric, do you have any?
I think okay, so follow me on this path here. This movie really reminded me a lot of my feelings walking out of the theater when I saw Inception. Only because it was one of those movies where you don't necessarily understand everything that was happening here, but you were like so like drawn into every aspect of it, right? And when I had completely forgotten about the shoe standing up straight, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's just like the top that didn't freaking fall over,
or did it? Right.
Or did it? Yeah, I don't know.
It's also, you could compare it to later on when OJ is talking to his sister about what's the word for a bad omen or a bad miracle. And that's kind of an example of a bad miracle in this movie. Well, yeah, let's go a little bit further into these characters then. We've touched on Steven Yeun. We have Keke Palmer's character, whose name I'm forgetting what her character's name is, but Daniel Kaluuya plays OJ in the film. And which one of these would you guys say is our main character? Because to me, this is one of the, I don't know. I know that Jordan Peele knew what he was doing and making it maybe unclear, but for me, it's one of the things that hurts my experience with the film, like especially more towards the end. Who is the main character of this movie? See, I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like even an ensemble needs a main character. Unless you're writing a novel, you can get away with that. But in movies, and I'll just fast forward like to the end of this. We'll revisit that. Obviously, it's weird. I wish one of them was the main character because it's the way that they divvy it up. It never really hits home for me either way. When Keke Palmer is the one that's saving the day, and her brother's way the hell over here, and I'm kind of thinking of him as the main character. He's the one we start with. Keke doesn't get introduced to like 15 minutes into the film. And if OJ is the main character, he's a difficult guy to really get behind. But Nick, what do you think of those two in the movie and the brother-sister dynamic?
I think the dynamic was cool. It's obviously like a yin-yang kind of a thing, right? He's adopted responsibility very early on. He stayed home. He's helping out dad. How many times did he say, I have to go work, or I have to do chores or something like that? And she just wanted to party, have fun, and like exploit the situation that's happening. Of course, he did too when she kind of convinced him that this is something that they could make money off of. I think for the sake of argument, OJ is our main character because everything follows him. The very beginning, we get that close up in the film studio, right? Like that whole embarrassing situation. She comes in and saves the day. He realizes what's going on. He brings everybody together. Everyone comes to his house. So, I mean, like for argument's sake, he's the main character. But you're right. I agree. But you're right. It is difficult to it's difficult to root. I don't know if it's difficult to root for him. I think part of the problem is he suffered a tragedy in the beginning of the movie, so we feel some empathy for him.
Right.
His dad died right in front of him from some mysterious thing. He's trying to reconcile that with also the burden of keeping that farm alive. Right. And now he's got his flaky sister that just showed back up, and who knows what kind of hell she's going to bring with her. And then they have the whole alien thing. And so he's got layers and layers of responsibility and just things to work through. And he's also kind of grumpy and maybe like too mature. I don't know.
Right.
He's hard to like.
There's part of me that I like it. I appreciate what Jordan Peele did and what Daniel Kaluuya did, creating the character, making him different, making him feel real. But it's like most movies, you're going to have your main character. There's going to be the equivalent of the save the cat scene early on, where it's like this guy just did something that it's like, oh, we're behind him. He just saved a cat. What we get from this guy is, yes, he's emotional when his father almost dies. He certainly doesn't save him. And then the next thing we see him do is lose a gig for the family. And you could blame all the other things going on. But to me, like, it's pretty clear. I don't know if incompetence is the right word, but his social awkwardness is what causes the horse to kick someone behind him. Yeah. So it's hard not to get behind him, because I am behind him, but he's a weird character. You know what I mean? He's not normal. But what do you think, Ian?
Yeah.
So this might be an unsatisfying answer, but like, I don't think that this is a movie that has a main character. Like if you're really going to have a main character, I would argue that the theme is the main character, and kind of alluding or, echoing what Nick was saying with the yin and yang. You have the thesis and the antithesis as these two main characters that are kind of like driving both, the theme forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, fair.
That's why I wanted this guy. This guy says smart shit.
No.
All right, we're going to book him for future shows. I want to touch on, it's one of these things we could just skip over this, but let's talk about this scene, because especially with your guys' first time watching the movie, I remember very specifically, I'm in the theater, OJ walks into the barn or the horse stable, whatever you call it, and then we've got this fake alien scene where we're seeing people dressed up as little green men. They're like poking out, and I'm thinking like, what? This is the cheesiest shit I've ever seen in my life. And then it's revealed that it's just a prank from Steven Yeun's business that he's got going on over there. It's his people. But I'll send it to you first this time, man. Take us through your experience with that scene. What and your wife, if you want to throw her opinions in.
I have to, because when we were watching it, no joke, my arm, or like my hand was gripping her arm when you saw the heads pop out. I'm like, did you see it? It's happening. The aliens are here. It's happening.
Yeah.
I was so excited. Yeah. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Is that in like an ape suit? What do they wear? What is this?
Yeah.
So it totally threw me for a loop. Like in retrospect, I love the scene, but that was probably the part of the movie that really threw me for a loop, where I was like, I thought it was going to zig and it zagged.
Right. Right, right. What about
Yeah.
you, Nick?
I liked him looking at the stable because we were sitting on a couple frames for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, this bulky shadow starts moving. And I'm like, holy shit, it's happening. It's happening. Here it is, right? Like I totally bought it that it was freaking aliens.
Yeah, me
And
too.
as soon as it was revealed that it wasn't aliens, it was the damn kids, I was like, oh no, this isn't going to be an alien movie. And that I got heartbroken. So like I went from this high of like, oh, that was kind of cool and creepy. Gave me like ET vibes, right? Like him running through the cornfield and going through the sheds and shit. And I'm like, oh, I got heartbroken. There was the one scene where they were focusing on the corner, right? And he was just waiting for that head to poke around the corner. First off, that scene went way too long.
Yeah, forever.
Way too long. And but it was creepy though. But inevitably my heart was broken when I realized what was actually going on.
Yeah.
So.
I felt like, I felt duped. He made me feel stupid. You know what I mean? I was a little angry at the guy. And I think the biggest issue that I have with it now, because I've seen this movie like a handful of times. I watched it twice this week, and I did a review on this on DHS back when it came out. So I've seen this movie quite a few times. That scene does not hold up on a rewatch. It's just okay, we know what's coming, because there is plenty of suspense there. It is creepy. Like Jordan Peele knows how to build suspense in a scene, but I think he was being a little too clever. He was like, "What is this gonna? We're gonna get him on this one." It's like, yeah, you got me, but now what about 50 years from now? You're not gonna get me every time, Jordan. But whatever. I mean, it still is pretty cool, and I really respect him because I feel like he does not give much of a shit what people think. Like I think as a filmmaker at this point in his career, like he's being divisive almost on purpose. But I don't know. To me, it's pretty funny. But let's get into the other horror elements of it. We talked about the Gordy scene. Maybe the only other one would be when it's raining blood on the house, which I'll let you guys get into it, but I think it's pretty badass. I didn't even fully appreciate it the first time that I saw it. Like, I don't even know if I was fully making the connection. It's like, oh, those are all the people that just got sucked up from Steven Yeun's farm that are screaming up there right now. That's all their blood raining down like a fucking Slayer song on the Haywood farm. But what do you think, Nick? And just of that scene, and then like let's get into the debate. Like, is this a horror movie? How much horror do you need to have in a film to label it a horror movie?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But that part where it's raining blood on the house, I thought it was pretty cool because like the house itself it's not like a scary house, so to speak, but it is like an older farm ranch kind of a house covered in blood. Like that was creepy. It was also creepy later on in the movie when it was daylight towards the end of the movie and you look at the house and it's still red. It's got all that stuff all over it. I was like, okay, cool. So they kept it going forward. They're not going to go out there and like wipe it down. But I did like when they're inside the house, they're cowering, they're hiding underneath tables. They hear the screaming and they don't know what's going on. Dude's flipping out. The dude from Fry's. He's flipping out right now, running all over the place. She's a little bit more experienced. She's kind of holding it together. She's got a knife, things like that. Yeah. You hear the screams, and then you hear that crunch, and then the screams stop, and then that's when the blood rains down. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that. And I think we got that like metal stuff, like the change and the keys falling again in that scene, and that really ties it back to the very beginning. Right. And we're like, oh, exactly. Okay, that's what's going on there. And yeah, the blood rain was pretty cool though. I thought they handled that really well.
I agree too. For me, it's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like they really went for it. It's unique. You don't see that scene. Horror movies are filled with what's a different way that we could do the same scene that we've done a million times. And me, as someone that's really into this, it's like, oh, they tweaked it a little bit. It was fucking awesome. But this is something that's completely different. We've never seen this. It was visually unique, and it was a different way to kind of generate fear.
And the alien was just trolling him the whole time. It was the biggest troll. He was like, I can't get to him. I'm gonna freak him out, man. And this is exactly how I'm gonna do it.
Totally.
And it worked.
Yeah. You remember you made me choke on this horse? I'm just gonna drop it right on your face.
I'm gonna drench your house with the juices of your insides, right? It's crazy.
What about you, E?
Dude, so it seems like Jordan Peele wears his directorial influences on his sleeve, right? Because I talked about Inception, and that was kind of the feeling that I had. But when it comes to what I was actually watching, the two things that this reminded me of is that scene in particular was very much Stanley Kubrick, right? The blood rushing out of the elevators in The Shining, right? Totally gave me vibes of that. But the other thing that this reminds me of is a lot of Steven Spielberg too, because I feel like the tone of this movie, and we'll get back to this as well, because we all kind of said like, is this horror? Is this not horror? This felt like Jaws to me.
100%,
the entirety of this movie is Jaws. Like, and I'm like, that dude's Brody, that dude's Quint, her right there, that's Hooper. Like throughout the entirety of the movie. So
and the structure of it too, the way that even there's the age-old debate, is Jaws a horror movie, and the way they both start out where all the horror's up front, and then by the third act we're under blue skies with the sun out, and it's an action adventure, and our antagonists are on the offensive. We're out there, we're trying to get the shark, we're trying to get the alien, and that element alone, just when we're on the offensive, it takes away some of the fear, and the sun being out. So that it really is like they get it starts out as horror, then it does go to a different genre, I feel like.
Yeah. And did you pick up on the musical cues as well? Like, I feel like, and when we reach the halfway point and on, like the music is all just like, bum, 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 like, you know, it's like.
But by the very end, at the very, very end, they're playing this Western music, and you look at OJ's off in the distance, and he's on a horse. And I don't know if you guys have seen Django Unchained.
He's the top of the West. Always cool, he's the best.
But it's like, that's fucking Django Unchained. I thought he was about to get up and do a little dance there, like he did in Django. Like, it was very reminiscent of that. But hell yeah. So for me, I would say it's a horror movie, because it's just like, I don't know, I will call any movie that's got a vampire in it, that's, if it's a vampire movie, it's a horror movie. There's a witch in it, it's a horror movie. This has a monster in it, and it's got two really gnarly horror scenes. I guess that's enough. It's the same thing with Jaws. Jaws has like 2 or 3 horror scenes early on, and it's enough that you got to classify it as that. But I would say Jordan Peele, that's part of the reason why some people didn't like this movie. It was advertised 100% as a horror, alien, UFO movie, and it wasn't completely that. So I hope his next movie leans more into the horror and less away from this tone. But I do feel he pulled off what he was going for. But I don't know if it's my favorite way to structure a film that you're going to call a horror movie.
Yeah.
But so we touched on, I think, quite a bit of what I wanted to. Before we get into the third act and wrap this thing up and rate the thing, you guys have any thoughts on the cinematography? I had a list of all the stuff the guy did. I had his goddamn name. Hold on. I actually think I might have it down here. Hold on. His name is Hoyt Van Hoyteman. It's one too many Hoyts for me, but I'll let him fucking slide. He's done a lot of big stuff. He did Let the Right One In, The Fighter. He did a Bond flick, and then he's done 4 Christopher Nolan films, including Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer. So the dude is pretty much probably the #1 guy in the world. I would say he's in the top 5 or top 10 of most prominent cinematographers in the world. But what did you think of the look of the film, Nick?
I enjoyed it. I think hearing that list, I think I would expect more from him. There are scenes that I loved. In particular, I really, really like the scene, the flashback of the ape just wrecking shop, right?
Yeah.
I loved
That's
that.
what came to my mind as soon as you said scenes I love. That's one in particular, the way the camera's moving.
The way and it feels like a continuous shot, although there's cuts to the kid's face and then cuts back. If they left it as a continuous shot, I think that would have been really cool, because you're going to live the entire moment through his perspective. You know the kid's going to be shivering, like in just fear. Like, we don't need to see that. We want to see this ape because we want to feel like we're completely helpless in that moment and watching this thing just destroy this woman, perfectly positioned out of with the couch in the way. Right. And that was a great scene. There was a couple moments, maybe we'll get to the very ending with how they actually achieved their objective of taking their picture and stuff like that. There was a couple interesting foreshadowing moments that led up to that point and stuff like that. But I don't know, there wasn't, and hopefully you guys might have a couple other examples, but like, I expected a little bit more, honestly, from that, but it was fine still, it was fine.
Right. I mean, I think it's beautifully shot. It's weird when you're talking about cinematography. It's like, how can you even break it down? Oh, the camera was like sliding. It's really hard to get into the details of it. One thing that stands out to me is just these nighttime shots. And I remember hearing just a lot of people really talking about, man, it must have been so difficult to light these shots outside, and then watching it this time, it's like, it's amazing, like how much you can see on these shots. I looked into it a little bit, and all of the nighttime shots were filmed with 2 cameras, where you've got one set to infrared and then one like normal, and then they overlay those images, and it makes the film unique in that way. It's like you don't see films don't look like that when you film them at night. But anything stand out for you, Eric?
The scene where the bystanders at Steven Yeun's farm were sucked up into the spaceship, where you're living it with them, and the claustrophobic feeling that you have in that scene, I think that was probably one of the standout cinematography moments right within the movie here. And I would argue, looking back at the stable scene where the fake aliens are popping out and everything, and Nick had mentioned, maybe we stuck around a second, maybe a little bit too long. I would make the argument that they stuck around just the appropriate amount, because it made you sit there and go, come on,
right,
come on.
That's true. It did make me verbally say that. So yeah, it worked.
Yeah, the scene you highlighted before that, though, that's another good horror element of the film. That's pretty goddamn horrific. All the screams and just you're right, the way that the alien looks, like especially inside, is so alien looking and so unique. We've never really seen something that looked like that. But speaking of the way that the alien looks, let's get into the third act. We've mentioned it turns into an action adventure. It really, I'll just come up front with it. To me, it's the stakes here that are kind of an issue for me. Like most alien movies or monster movies, we're worried about the characters dying, right? And I guess we are worried about our main characters dying here, but an alien movie, you think there's going to be a larger threat. The main goal of this movie is just to get some fucking clicks. It's like, really? That's what we want? We want clicks. We want to get on Oprah. That is just, and I know it ties into the themes. It's like, to me, it's like one of the things that's cool about Jordan Peele, but at the same time, he's almost too focused on theme. Like, oh, we're gonna critique this about society, then we're gonna critique this about society, which is good. It is what I want my filmmakers to do, but I don't know if every aspect of the film needs to really lean into that. I guess I'm gonna send it to you first. Like, what do you think of the look of the alien once it was revealed fully? Like, this is not a UFO, this is an alien, and it looks like this angelic creature, which I guess it's based off of some 90s anime show where they've got angels flying around, and also just the biblical description of angels. But what do you think of the alien?
Dude, and that's exactly what I was about to say. It looks like, I mean, I'm not a religious person by any means, but it looked like what you hear is the biblical interpretation of an angel, the sphere with the many eyes and wings just kind of coming off everywhere.
Right.
I'll be honest though, the first time I saw it, it looked like a carnival toy, like a little blow toy that was like.
If it made those noises, I would click. Nope.
But I think, it was effective in its original. Like, you cannot say that you've ever seen an alien, shown on film like that before.
Right. Even I looked up the anime that they're talking about that it's based on. It's like, oh, what the fuck he was looking at, because it doesn't look like that. But I guess he was inspired by it. But Nick, you got thoughts on the creature design?
Okay, so there's 3 different things, right? So there's the initial one where it's flying out and it looks like a flying saucer, you know what I mean? And it has the ruffly bottom and it has the suction like funnel, right? Like there's that version of them. There's the inside where it's just that claustrophobic, you're in some kind of intestinal thing. We didn't need to understand how that worked internally, because we just understood that it was like a Venus flytrap situation almost, where it would just kind of dissolve you and spit out whatever it doesn't like. But then at the very end, we had like this weird parasail-y looking thing with that green square that would just pulsate at you. You know what I mean? I was just like, at no point was I really scared of it.
Yeah.
I liked the mystery of it, but it wasn't a frightening thing.
Totally.
And we figured out how to trick it, like in the third act as well. Like, you know what I mean? So like we figured out how to avoid it.
Right.
And now we can exploit that very, very successfully. So it was like, it was never a scary thing.
The trick about what they use to exploit it is just, it's almost, you're right, it takes away the threat a lot, and it just makes it seem really simple. Like, most aliens, we're thinking, oh, there's this higher intelligence, and the fact that now that we know that we're also smarter than this thing, it appears, you know what I mean, that we can trick it just by not looking at it, and it's not going to attack us. First of all, does that fucking work? If a dog is attacking me and I was like, oh, and it's going to stop? I don't know. I assume that's got to be a semi-accurate, like, animal trainer thing, or else they wouldn't have put him in the movie. But it's also, it's just a little bit weak sauce to me. A tiny bit.
I thought so. And they tried to play it. They tried to connect it to the earlier scene on stage when what was it, like some kind of reflective?
Yep.
The horse saw something and he heard some noise and there's too much stimulus, right?
Right.
And then he reflected on that later in the movie, that same orb doing something with it. And then they made some kind of a connection with the eyes that I couldn't make those connections, right? To make it make sense to me. It wasn't back in the ape scene because they made eye contact on the fist bump. So that part kind of lost me. I'm like, how did he get to the point where he knew that you needed to make eye contact? Like that part lost me. I don't know if you guys have
I mean, partially, and I know you realize this, but it's just part of it is just him being an animal wrangler, so he knows it. And there is the one scene where I think it's where they're raining blood on the house. He realizes it there. At one point, he looks away from it where I wear my sunglasses during that scene, which was dope. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
The way they were slowing it down to represent where the alien was.
Yeah.
That was pretty fucking awesome.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they set it up. It worked well for what they wanted to get the alien to do in the movie. It worked, but I don't know, all of the action adventure stuff, you nailed it, Nick. Like the fear is gone. Once we see this thing, it's not a threatening look. And you got to imagine that's done intentionally. He knew what he was doing. And that's the way I look at it is Jordan Peele was just like, all right, I'm going to do partially a horror movie. And then I'm just going to take it away. And it's action adventure. You're behind these characters and hopefully you're bought in by that point, because he just took all the horror element out of it. You know what I mean? He kept with the comedy and all that. But, yeah, just let's get your guys' thoughts on just your overall thoughts. I guess I've said my piece on it, but on the third act, the adventure aspect of it, and then we'll grade this thing. Eric, I'll start with you this time.
So, I mean, I really loved it. I was satisfied with everything, albeit without the the shoehorned in aspect of not being able to look at it or whatever. But at least they did tie it in a little bit. Like I mean, it was a little 50-50, but but I think they made it work here. And I bought in. Like I said, I mean, Jaws is honestly one of my favorite movies of all time here. So the aspects where they brought that in and they made it that kind of movie, I was along for the ride.
Hell yeah, dude. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, and they introduced a few more characters as well, and those characters were pretty interesting. Maybe a little bit too much, to be honest with you. Some of those characters a little bit too much. We can maybe get into that a little bit later.
Well, I'll just throw in quickly for my money. I thought neither of them felt like they came in super organically, especially the tech guy. Well, both of them. Really, it was like, we met this guy once. We kind of lingered on him for a half a second. The cinematographer, we'll call him later. He'll come out and do this thing with these random people. Kiki's speech was fucking great. You know what I mean? He bought in. But to me, that they weren't the strength of the movie for me, especially the first time around. I was like, man, were they shoehorned in? Well, that's the thing about watching a movie multiple times. I already have kind of bought their story and I know their character a little bit, so it's easier to buy on a rewatch. But it's not super organic for either of those two, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I did enjoy the hell out of the prize electronic guy, though. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Well, he was cool just because he had a lot of his own shit going on. You know what I mean? And he was using this as like hey, I know what I'm doing. But he's going through like a bad breakup or something like that, right? Wasn't that going on?
For your relationship, fucking CW. She got to show it. Got to show a pilot on the CW. I guess he came into it and it was supposed to be a very like straight comedic role, and
it came across
that actor really he added a lot of the nuance to it. From what I hear, it was supposed to be even funnier, not quite as like depressing as he can kind of be. I mean, like I said, I buy the cinematographer. I'm into it, but even like his dedication, he just got brought onto this thing, and out of nowhere, he's going to sacrifice his life for this miracle shot. After, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the way I read it. They just got the shot. OJ's doing a run. OJ's doing a run. He does the run. They fucking got the shot of this alien coming down, sweeping sideways, chasing this dude on a horse, and then right after, he's like, I need a better shot. It's like, fuck it, that's Oprah. Like, you're definitely going to Oprah on that shot you just got. I would chill on all that. But
I mean, I guess that's just like the professional inside of him. Like, it's never going to be enough. Whatever it is you're chasing, as soon as you find it, you're going to want to get a better version of it or something else. And I don't know.
But isn't that further proof though that the theme is in fact the main character?
Yeah, no. Yeah, you nailed it.
Well, and if he didn't do that, he wouldn't have sacrificed him. Well, essentially, he sacrifices himself. Does he keep? So who had the film? Because
He's got it. Here's the way I read
You know what I mean?
that.
Like he ruined the film.
He's just hoping that it's going to come down and it's going to survive the fall. That's the only way I guess it, because they even show it like as he's going up, he's cranking while he's being sucked up, and then all of a sudden it just shows film like going through something. And it's the way that we understand the way that this alien works. It's not going to erase that film. So in my mind, I'm just saying he dies and the film survived, and that shot is going to be there. So they're going to Oprah at least 3 times. If they've got that shot, they got the sideways shot, then we get the picture at the end.
They get the worst one at the end.
Exactly. I'm forgetting E. I apologize. Did I already send it to you for your thoughts on the final act? I already did, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Well, let's do it then. E, I'll send it to you for your final thoughts. What did you think of the flick, and what's your letter grade, my brother? You guys watch it on the premiere. If you've seen Nope, which you have, I'm sure you have. Let me know what your thoughts are on your letter grade as well.
I kind of loved this movie. Like, I mean, I don't love it as a movie, but I love the movie itself, right? I think that they did an exemplary job at driving home. I keep saying the word theme, but they really drove it home, which was the exploitation, the exploitative nature of everything around us in the world. And it's the perfect time that this kind of thing came out, because we're coming out of arguably the time, and it keeps driving that direction too, where our eyeballs are always on the thing that is the worst possible thing. It's kind of like the old adage, like you can't stop yourself from looking at a car accident when you drive past it, right? And that was everything that's gone through this movie. And it's every character kind of goes through it, with the exception of OJ a little bit. He's kind of the thesis or the antithesis of everyone else. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but during the movie, do you guys recognize the guy that played the filmographer? Do you guys know who that is?
No, I don't.
Looked familiar, but I couldn't.
It was driving me nuts watching the movie. So his name is Michael Wincott. That was the bad guy from the original Crow movie. And I don't know.
Fire it up, dude! Yes. As you said that, I started looking at his face, and I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, he had long black hair. He's got that fucking. It was a one-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people. That was a fucking awkward scene. The way he drug that out, it was fucking.
Yes,
but he kind of crushed it.
Now, and as when I realized that, I was like, oh man, like, and maybe this is coincidental, but it's like, wow, like they cast the bad guy from the movie where the main actor was killed, like, and they still put the movie out. Like, talk about like an early exploitative thing. Again, this has to be coincidental, but I was like, wow, that's so crazy to think about, like layer upon layer upon layer. So
that's interesting. I wonder if all of the podcasts and all of the YouTube fucking channels that have talked about this movie, if anyone's ever pointed that out, because I'm not 100% if it is accidental. I don't know. I'm gonna make the connection. I'm gonna say you're a genius, and so is Jordan Peele, but it's just me.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah. But the honest to God truth is, I'm going to be talking about this for a long, long time. I loved the movie.
Hell yeah, man! I absolutely love to hear that. What's your grade then, brother?
I'm gonna be scarce with my A pluses, but this is definitely an A.
Hell yeah, dude! I love hearing it. I'm really glad you enjoyed it so much. Nick, my brother, where are you at on it?
Yeah. There are a lot of things that I like about it, and there's a couple things that bothered me. The biggest thing I think was the misdirect. Now, I think they handled it fairly well. Like we were sold. This was aliens, man. This was aliens from everything we saw from the trailers to the beginning opening scenes. A third of the way through the movie, right? But that little misdirect bumped it down a little bit. But I think how they handled it maybe evened it out a little bit. I like the brother and the sister dynamic. I like Steven Yeun's character. I like his trauma that he's trying to cover up. He's exploiting it at this point. He built a freaking theme park that, for like aliens and stuff. And so like, he's really doing what he can do to cover up that trauma in his life. So I enjoyed that journey. The ending of the movie was interesting. Like I said, some of the newer characters, the director, the filmographer they bring in, the fries guy, they were a little bit wonky here and there, but overall it was kind of cool. The monster element was a little bit off. I don't know, but there was a lot of charming things about it though. Right. So it makes it really hard to grade this movie, because I feel like
it is a really hard one to grade for me personally.
Because like at the end of the day, when I watched the movie, I was surprised by a lot of things, either good or bad. Right? There was a lot of interesting foreshadowing, a lot of thematic things, like Eric is referring to. So there's a lot of redeeming qualities about it. But and also I didn't dislike the movie. Like I came out of it going like, this was pretty interesting. It didn't go exactly how I thought, but it had some cool things going on.
It's entertaining, unquestionably.
It is. Yeah. It is entertaining. It's not exactly like it's not like a traditional horror movie, but it depends on your definition. Like we keep talking about the parallels with Jaws, you know what I mean? So there's some things going on there. So it was really hard to grade this thing, honestly. I would probably give it, I don't know, a B plus. I'm going to say a B plus because of those misdirects. I'm trying to see what this movie would be in my head if it was aliens, and I can't figure it out because I'm not as cool as Jordan Peele. But I think a B plus is solid, and it might be undercutting it a little bit. But it was a cool movie.
Hell yeah, dude. I mean, I think I'm right there with you, because I will say I'm right there with you in the fact that it was hard. It is hard to grade because even the things that I don't like about it, that's just me not viewing the movie on their terms that they made the movie. I just want you ever look at someone that looks like someone you know, and you're just trying to make their face look exactly like that person I know. You know what I mean? You just can't quit looking at him and be like, if I fucking tweak that, you would be Jessica or whatever. I don't even know what Jessica, but you know what I mean? That's what this movie is. But it's like it's not my creation, that's Jordan Peele's creation. So who the fuck am I? As I said, I watched the thing probably 2 or 3 times when it came out, and I watched it twice this week. And it's just, it's never boring. It's super entertaining. Dialogue is great. Cinematography is beautiful. All the actors are fantastic. The other thing is I'm comparing it to Get Out and I'm comparing it to Us, which are 2 films that I do like more. So I gotta go down a little bit, but B plus from me, an A from Eric, and a B plus from Nick. You guys down in the comments gave it something. Hopefully you guys are fighting about it down there. Hit me up on social media. Let's fight about it some more. Fight down in the comments. Fight. Let's make a spectacle out of these comments, people. But that's the other big thing. He wanted a spectacle film. And that's the thing I was going to kind of start off the show with. Part of the reason why he wrote this is he's watching the pandemic, right? He's watching it on TV, just like all of us. And he's realizing America's addiction to spectacle. So he wanted to make a film kind of critiquing that idea. And then plus he's like, what do people want? We're trapped inside. He's trapped inside while writing it. He's like, people are going to want big blue skies. So that's why he wanted to be out in nature, all these clouds, all these blue skies. So it's one of those things. It's like, oh, I get that too. And he did that pretty goddamn successfully. But again, I appreciate all you guys watching on the premiere. Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Nick from Comic Culture. I don't know if I'm pointing at you because I got my thing mirrored. I think I'm pointing at you right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And my screen, I'm pointing fucking that way, and that's not at you. Wait, but anyway, I'll pump you a little bit, then you can guys give any specifics. Weekly comic book reviews from a super fucking bright guy that loves to break them down. He's giving all sorts of tips and tricks about if you're getting fresh into comic collecting. And then he's doing comic look aheads if you're into the new comics that are coming out. He's doing key comic flips through on some of the most classic books in the history of the genre, or of comic books in general. But you got anything specific you want to tell the people about before we get out of here, brother?
Yeah, and over on One Collection Down, we have Blaine Fable and his amazing friends. You can catch us on Friday nights, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Catch us over there. Lots of cool people are going to be joining. We got Stu, Dr. Doom's Fan Club. He's co-hosting that one.
Pretty much all the people you see on this show on a regular basis are on Fable's show as well, talking comics.
Exactly. Yep. But you nailed it, dude. Comic book reviews, new release stuff, FOC, and the occasional collaboration with you, man. I appreciate you having me on again.
Hell yeah, man. It's great to have you on, man. This will certainly not be the last time. You got any final thoughts? Anything you want to say on the way out of here?
No, just thank you for having me, man. It's been a blast. This hopefully is the first of many, man, because this is just such a fun time.
Absolutely, man.
Hell yeah.
Appreciate all you people, and we'll see you next time.